close the curtains, brew some herbal tea.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. This is Lynn Roberts, holistic health counselor and herbalist, and today I'm going to walk you through how to make a chive blossom apple cider vinegar. So these beauties right here are chives that I plucked from my garden. This plant is now 4-year-old perennial plant and just keeps coming back bigger and bigger every year. So this was only about an eighth of the blossoms that my chives plant is producing at the moment. And the chives are one of the earliest plants to bloom in my garden, and all the other flowers come a little bit later into the spring and into the early summer. But chives has been blooming since late April, and then it'll go through a period where it doesn't really produce any new blooms in the middle of the summer, and then there are some new blooms that show up at the end of summer in the early fall. So this is a perfect time for me to pluck some of those chive blooms. What I do is I pluck them from the base of the plant, so the whole stem, and that helps to thin the plant out and prevent it from taking over too much, because I have my oregano and my thyme and my wood betony all near my chives plant. And then it provides me with a great opportunity to have them in a vase on my kitchen counter. And it's a great way to incorporate some green, some chives into everyday meals. So I chop up the stems and I use them for salads. I use them on, sour cream, all sorts of uses for the chives, which you may be familiar with already, a lot of culinary uses. However, the chive blossom, a lot of people are not familiar that they too are edible. You see this beautiful purple color of the chives. When we soak this in vinegar for 30 days, this purple color is transferred into the vinegar. So the vinegar turns this beautiful fuchsia color. And then what I do with the vinegar is after 30 days, I will strain it through a fine sieve, and I will store it in a jar, keep it on my counter, and I'll use it anytime I use regular apple cider vinegar. So one of my favorite things to do with the vinegar is to use it as a salad dressing, to mix it with a little bit of olive oil and put it on salads. I've also used it in stir fries, and I've also used it on pastas, making pasta salads. So this vinegar is delicious. It's purple. It's so appealing to the eye and tastes so good. It tastes, you taste a hint of onion and garlic in the vinegar. So it really adds something to the culinary experience. So to be able to make your chive vinegar, there's just a few things that you need. You need the chive blossoms, of course. You need apple cider vinegar with the mother. Any brand is good. I just like to make sure that it's organic and it has the mother in it. You need your scissors, of course, and I use a chopstick to stir the vinegar around the chives in the jar. So we have our ball jar or mason jar, and our lid, of course, double lid, lid and band. And then what I do is I use wax paper or parchment paper as a barrier between the liquid in the jar and the lid. And I do that because apple cider vinegar reacts with metal and can rust the metal quickly, and we don't want to contaminate our vinegar with rust. So it is a nice barrier, waterproof barrier between the metal of your lid and the vinegar. All right, so we're going to get started. And the first thing I'm going to do is start clipping my chive blossoms off of the plant here and placing it into the jar. So I'm going to take about a minute to do this. Beautiful purple blooms. And this should fill a decent part of the jar. We want to fill it up as much as we can because these are fresh blooms and not dry. We fill our jar all the way up. When we work with dry plant material, we only fill our jar about halfway up because the plant will rehydrate and expand, and we want room for whatever menstruum, whatever liquid we have in our jar to touch each of part of the plant material. Right, so I'm filling my jar up. We're a little over halfway. And I'm using the folk method, which is filling the jar halfway for dry material and all the way for fresh material. There's also a more scientific method you can use using weight and volume, which I won't get into here, but that's more for tincturing. Almost done here. And that's a perfect amount of chive blossoms looking beautiful in the jar. Now I'm left with all of these stems, and these stems are edible. Like I said, you just grab a few every time you want to have some chives, chop, and add that sweet oniony taste and enhance your culinary experience. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my apple cider vinegar into the jar. Now the jar has been sterilized, cleaned and sterilized, because we don't want any bacteria harboring in there, although it would be pretty difficult for bacteria to live in the vinegar menstruum or liquid. So I'm going to turn my camera down so that you can see my counter and what I'm doing. So I have my jar full of fresh blossoms, and I'm going to just slowly pour the vinegar in. Do it slow to give the plants an opportunity to absorb some of it. And when I'm about halfway, just pause, take my chopstick or whatever you're using here, and make sure that the chive blossoms are all surrounded by the vinegar, that there's no dry pockets, because those dry pockets are an opportunity for bacteria to grow, which we don't want. Fill it up a little more and give it another little stir. And the apple cider vinegar is already taking on a purple tint from the vinegar, or from the chives, I mean. And let's go all the way to the top. I always leave like a few centimeters of room, especially with vinegars, at the top of the jar, to just further discourage any rusting of my metal lid. Even with the barrier, sometimes the vinegar can get through. So we're stirring. It's looking beautiful. And I think that we've eliminated all of the dry pockets here. So each bloom is surrounded by the vinegar. And it's important that all the plant material at the top is covered by the vinegar, because anything sticking out is also an opportunity for bacteria to grow. Wonderful. So now I'm going to place my wax paper or you can use parchment paper as well. You can use a cloth if you'd like. And then my lid, press that down and then secure it on with my band nice and tight. Now, what you want to do is you want to steep these chive blossoms in the vinegar for about 30 days. And as I said a little earlier, after 30 days, you will take a fine sieve and pour the vinegar through a fine sieve. So I use a fine metal strainer. Sometimes I'll use a cheesecloth or a nut milk bag, which is a nice fine material that you can reuse over and over again. Inside of my fine metal strainer to make sure that no particles get into my finished product. And then you can store it back in the bottle that your vinegar came from. Or I like flip top bottles. They look really nice on the counter. This is a really beautiful oil. So I love to keep mine on the counter. It gets used up pretty quick, so I usually don't keep it out of the light like I suggest for a lot of our herbal remedies, is to keep it out of the light, to keep it lasting longer, and to keep it in a dark bottle. But I like to look at the purple color, so I usually just use the bottle that I get the vinegar from, or a flip top bottle, and have it on my counter, and it's there reminding me to use it. And the purple color is very enticing and beautiful. So it's a nice encouragement to use this and have a nice culinary experience. So yes, that's it. It's very simple. You want to, of course, label on the side or the top. I use masking tape, or there's these great ball jar labels by Ball that dissolve when you wash. So they're easy to get off, but you can use masking tape as well, or a reusable marker, and write here the date, and just keep in mind that you need to strain this in about 30 days. If it sits a little longer, that's fine. You don't want it to sit for too long, because then the plant material starts to degrade, and it's difficult to get those fine pieces of plant material out in your finished product. So thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, you can DM me, or you can leave a comment on this video, and we'll talk soon. We'll be back in the kitchen soon.